The morning air felt thick with the kind of silence that comes just before chaos. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes stood at the front of her fourth-grade classroom, attendance clipboard in hand, watching as 23 children shuffled to their seats with the usual symphony of backpack zippers, pencil case rattles, and whispered conversations about weekend adventures. 23 pairs of sneakers squeaked against linoleum. 23 chairs scraped backward. 22 children sat down. One remained standing. Eleanor's eyes landed on the girl in the third row, second seat from the window. Mara Sullivan, 9 years old, hair the color of wheat pulled back in a ponytail that had seen better days. She stood beside her desk with her shoulders hunched forward, arms crossed tightly over her chest, staring down at the worn textbook someone had left on her desk the day before. The other children were settling into their morning routines, pulling out homework folders, comparing trading cards, making plans for lunch. Mara stood perfectly still like a statue carved from something fragile. Eleanor felt the first flutter of concern in her chest, the kind teachers develop after years of reading the invisible language children speak through their bodies. She set down her clipboard and moved down the aisle, her flats making soft padding sounds against the floor. The morning light streaming through the windows caught particles of chalk dust suspended in the air, tiny galaxies spinning between the desks. "Mara, sweetheart," Eleanor said, keeping her voice gentle, the tone she used when approaching a frightened animal. "Let's take our seat. Okay? We're about to start morning announcements." The girl's shoulders tensed. She didn't look up. Her knuckles had gone white where her fingers gripped her own arms. A few of the other children had stopped their conversations to watch. Eleanor could feel their attention shifting, that peculiar sixth sense children have for when something isn't quite right in their carefully ordered world. "Mara," Eleanor tried again, crouching slightly to get closer to the girl's eye level. "Is something wrong with your chair? Did someone put something on it?" Mara shook her head, just barely, the smallest movement. Her lips pressed together so tightly they'd gone pale. Eleanor noticed the way the girl's breathing had changed, faster now, shallow, like someone preparing to run, or someone trying very hard not to cry. "I'll stand," Mara whispered, so quietly Eleanor almost missed it. "Please, I want to stand." Eleanor felt her stomach tighten. In 15 years of teaching, she'd seen defiance, rebellion, pranks, tears, tantrums, and every variation of childhood resistance to authority. This wasn't any of those things. This was fear. Pure, undiluted, bone-deep fear. "Okay," Eleanor heard herself say, straightening up. "Okay, you can stand for now, but we're going to talk about this later, all right?" Mara nodded, still not meeting her eyes. Eleanor moved back to the front of the classroom, her mind already racing through possibilities. Anxiety disorder, social issues. Had something happened on the playground she didn't know about? She made a mental note to check with the other teachers at lunch to see if anyone had noticed anything unusual. The morning announcements crackled through the ancient speaker mounted in the corner of the room. Principal Davidson's voice droned on about the upcoming book fair, the lost and found overflow, reminders about appropriate hallway behavior. Eleanor went through the motions of taking attendance, marking Mara as present, trying to ignore the way her eyes kept drifting back to that third row, second seat, where a 9-year-old girl stood like she was waiting for something terrible to happen. Before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoy educational stories like this, be sure to like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who'd love it too. The rest of that morning passed in a blur of multiplication tables and reading comprehension worksheets. Eleanor taught on autopilot, her teacher voice saying all the right things while her mind stayed fixed on Mara. The girl hadn't moved. She stood in the exact same position, only shifting her weight from one foot to the other every few minutes. Her face had gone pale, a thin sheen of sweat visible on her forehead despite the air conditioning. Twice Eleanor saw her sway slightly, as if her legs might give out. During independent reading time, Eleanor made her way back to Mara's desk. The other children had scattered to the reading corner, the beanbag chairs, the carpet squares near the windows. Mara remained standing, holding a book she wasn't reading, her eyes fixed on the pages without seeing them. "Mara," Eleanor said softly, keeping her distance this time, not wanting to trigger whatever panic had gripped the girl earlier. "I'm worried about you, honey. Are you feeling sick? Do you need to see the nurse?" "I'm fine," Mara said, the words coming out too fast, rehearsed. I want to stand, that's all. Please don't make me sit." There was something in the way she said that last part, a desperation that made Eleanor's skin prickle. "Don't make me sit. Not can't. Not won't. Make me." "Nobody's going to make you do anything," Eleanor said, and she meant it. "But I need you to help me understand. Did something happen? Did someone say something to you?" Mara's eyes flickered up for just a second, long enough for Eleanor to see the fear swimming in them, and something else, something that looked like calculation, like a child trying to figure out how much truth was safe to tell. "No," Mara said finally. "Nothing happened. I'm just tired of sitting. My legs needed a stretch." It was a lie. Eleanor knew it was a lie, but she also knew that pushing too hard, too fast, would only make the girl retreat further into whatever fortress she'd built around herself. So she nodded, smiled, and moved away, letting Mara think she'd bought the story. But Eleanor Hayes hadn't become Teacher of the Year 3 times running by ignoring her instincts, and every instinct she had was screaming that something was desperately, dangerously wrong. She started watching more carefully after that. During math class, she noticed how Mara gripped the edge of her desk when she thought no one was looking, knuckles white, as if holding herself upright required all her concentration. During science, when they were supposed to be drawing diagrams of the water cycle, Eleanor saw Mara's hand shake so badly she could barely hold the pencil. The girl's drawings, usually neat and precise, came out as shaky lines and smudged erasures. At recess, Eleanor stood at her usual post near the playground equipment, supposedly watching for skinned knees and playground disputes. In reality, she watched Mara. The girl didn't run, didn't play, didn't even walk around the track with the other kids who preferred talking to sweating. She stood near the fence, in the shade of the old oak tree, one hand resting against the chain link as if it was the only thing keeping her upright. Sarah Martinez, one of the teaching assistants, wandered over with a coffee cup in hand. "You okay, Eleanor? You look like you're trying to solve world hunger with your mind." "That girl," Eleanor said, nodding toward Mara. "Over by the fence. What do you know about her?" Sarah squinted across the playground. "Mara Sullivan? Quiet kid. Good student, I think. Why? She won't sit down. All morning she's been standing. Won't even tell me why." "Maybe she's got ants in her pants," Sarah said with a laugh. "I had a nephew like that. Couldn't sit still if his life depended on it. ADHD, they said. Got him on some medication and boom, problem solved." But Eleanor shook her head. "It's not that. It's not hyperactivity. It's fear, Sarah. She's terrified of something." Sarah's smile faded. "Terrified? Of what?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out." The bell rang, shrill and insistent, calling the children back inside. Eleanor watched as Mara pushed herself away from the fence, moving slowly, carefully, like every step hurt. The girl's uniform, the standard polo shirt and khaki pants required by the school, hung loose on her thin frame. Eleanor had noticed that before, how Mara seemed to swim in clothes that should have fit, but now something else caught her attention. The way the fabric didn't move quite right, The way it seemed stiff in places, bunched in others. The way Mara held herself so carefully, as if her own body was something dangerous she had to manage. Eleanor's stomach dropped. She'd seen that before, years ago, with another student. A boy who'd worn long sleeves even in summer, who'd flinched at sudden movements, who'd had that same haunted look in his eyes. She'd reported her concerns to the counselor who'd contacted child services, who'd found. She pushed the memory away. She couldn't jump to conclusions, not yet, but she couldn't ignore this either. Lunch brought another crisis. The cafeteria buzzed with its usual controlled chaos. Children shouting over each other, trading snacks, complaining about the mysterious meat substance masquerading as Salisbury steak. Eleanor had lunch duty, which meant walking the aisles, breaking up food fights before they started, reminding kids that chocolate milk wasn't a projectile weapon. She found Mara standing at the end of a table, lunch tray in hand, staring down at an empty seat like it was a trap. Other children squeezed past her, bumping her accidentally, not noticing how she flinched with each contact. Eleanor watched as Mara set her tray down on the table, but remained standing, picking at her food while standing. Something no other child was doing. Marcus Thompson, the vice principal, appeared at Eleanor's elbow. "Mrs. Hayes, we have a rule about standing during lunch. Fire code, you know. Kids need to be seated." "Give me a minute," Eleanor said, already moving toward Mara's table. She crouched down next to the girl, keeping her voice low. "Mara, sweetheart, you have to sit. It's a school rule. Can you do that for me? Just for lunch?" Mara's eyes went wide, panicked. "Please," she whispered. "Please don't make me. I can't." "You can't, or you won't." Eleanor kept her tone gentle, non-judgmental, but she needed to understand the distinction. Mara's voice broke. "It hurts. When I sit, it hurts." The world seemed to tilt. Eleanor felt ice water flood through her veins. "What hurts, Mara? Where does it hurt?" But the girl's face had closed down again, that terrible shuttered look children get when they've said too much, revealed more than they meant to. "Nothing, never mind. I'll sit." "No," Eleanor said quickly. "No, don't. If it hurts, I'm not going to make you do something that hurts. Come with me." She led Mara out of the cafeteria, ignoring Marcus's questioning look, ignoring the whispers from the other children who'd noticed something unusual was happening. Eleanor's classroom was empty during lunch. She brought Mara inside, closed the door, and pulled out her desk chair. "I need you to be honest with me," Eleanor said, sitting down herself so she wouldn't be looming over the girl. "I can't help you if you don't tell me what's wrong. Are you hurt? Did you fall? Did you hurt yourself playing?" Mara stood there, trembling now, full body tremors that made her look like she might shatter. Tears started to leak from the corners of her eyes, silent tears that spoke of long practice at crying without making sound. "I didn't fall," she whispered finally. "I didn't hurt myself." "Then who hurt you?" Silence. The kind of silence that screams. Eleanor felt her heart hammering against her ribs. Every teacher received training on recognizing signs of abuse, unexplained injuries, behavioral changes, fear of adults, fear of going home. But knowing the signs academically and seeing them play out in real time were two entirely different experiences. She felt simultaneously hyper-aware and paralyzed, knowing she needed to act, but terrified of making the wrong move. "Mara, has someone been hurting you at home?" The girl's face crumpled. "If I sit," she said, voice breaking, "if I sit down, it gets worse. The pain gets worse. I can stand. If I stand, it's not so bad, but sitting makes it press, makes it hurt more. Please, Mrs. Hayes, please just let me stand." Eleanor's hands were shaking. She clasped them together to hide it. Okay, you can stand. But Mara, I need you to tell me. Are there injuries? Are you hurt somewhere that sitting makes worse? A tiny nod. So small Eleanor might have missed it if she hadn't been watching so carefully. Can you show me? Not your actual body, just point to where it hurts? Mara's hand moved to her lower back, then around to her sides. Here, and here. There's stuff under my clothes to protect it, but sitting pushes on it. Stuff to protect it. Eleanor's mind raced. Bandages, padding. Something to cover injuries serious enough that sitting down became unbearable. Who put the stuff there? Your parents? Mara's face went blank. I did. I had to. Otherwise, they'd see at school. And I can't. Mrs. Hayes, you can't tell anyone. Please. If they find out I told, if anyone knows. Sweetheart, listen to me. Eleanor moved off her chair, kneeling on the floor so she could look Mara in the eyes. I'm a teacher. That means if I think a child is being hurt, I have to tell someone who can help. It's not because I want to get anyone in trouble. It's because my job is to keep you safe. Do you understand? No, Mara said, and now the tears were coming faster. No, you don't understand. If you tell, it'll be worse. It always gets worse when someone tries to help. The last time someone called, they asked questions, looked around, and then they left. And then. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Eleanor could fill in the blanks, each one more horrifying than the last. Who hurt you, Mara? Was it your mom? Your dad? Someone else in your house? But Mara was shaking her head now, backing away. I shouldn't have said anything. Please forget it. Please, Mrs. Hayes. I'll sit. I'll sit right now. I'll be good. Please don't call anyone. Eleanor stood slowly, carefully, trying not to spook the girl further. I'm not going to forget this. I can't forget this. But I promise you I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you're safe. That's my job. Keeping you safe is the most important thing in the world to me right now. You don't understand, Mara said again, but her voice had gone hollow, defeated. Nobody ever understands. Eleanor made a decision. I'm going to call the school nurse. She's going to look at what you've got under your clothes, just to see how bad it is. We won't take anything off that you don't want taken off. But I need to know if you need a doctor right now. Today, can you let us do that? Mara stood frozen for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. The nurse's office smelled like antiseptic and the weird mint-scented cleaning solution the custodial staff used. Nurse Patricia Chen took one look at Mara, then at Eleanor's face, and her professional mask slipped into place. No questions yet. Just gentle efficiency. Mara, honey, I'm going to need you to lift your shirt just a little bit, just so I can see what's underneath. Mrs. Hayes is going to stay right here with you. Is that okay? Another nod. Mara's hands went to the hem of her polo shirt, and she lifted it slowly, reluctantly, like revealing something shameful. Eleanor heard Patricia's sharp intake of breath at the same moment she saw it herself. Makeshift bandages, created from what looked like torn strips of towel, wrapped around Mara's lower back and sides. They'd been secured with medical tape, the kind you could buy at any drugstore. But it was the dark stains that made Eleanor's stomach lurch. Old blood dried to rust-colored patches on the fabric, and the way the wrapping pressed against skin that looked mottled, discolored. Oh, sweetheart, Patricia breathed. Mara, who did this to you? I did the bandages, Mara said quickly, by myself, so it wouldn't bleed through my clothes. I'm not talking about the bandages, Patricia said gently. I'm talking about whatever made you need them. Mara's face went blank again. Eleanor recognized that look now. It was the look of a child who'd learned that telling got you hurt worse than staying silent. Patricia caught Eleanor's eye and jerked her head toward the door. Eleanor followed her to the hallway, leaving Mara finally sitting, on the examination table. "I'm calling 911, Patricia said without preamble. "This isn't something we handle in-house. Those injuries need professional medical evaluation, and we need authorities involved now." "How bad is it?" Eleanor asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. "Bad enough that I'm worried about infection. Bad enough that whatever happened, it wasn't an accident. Eleanor, you did the right thing bringing her to me, but this is beyond school protocol now. This is criminal." Eleanor felt her knees go weak. She leaned against the hallway wall. "She's terrified. She said it gets worse when people try to help." "It probably does," Patricia said grimly. "That's how abusers work. They make the victim believe that asking for help is the most dangerous thing they could do. But we don't have a choice anymore. Those injuries. Eleanor, some of them look old. This has been going on for a while." The weight of that statement crushed down on Eleanor's chest. While she'd been teaching long division and state capitals, one of her students had been suffering in silence. How many days had Mara stood in her classroom, wrapped in makeshift bandages, too terrified to sit down, and Eleanor hadn't noticed? How many times had she walked past Mara in the hallway and missed the signs? "Make the call," Eleanor said. "I'll stay with her." She went back into the nurse's office. Mara had pulled her shirt back down and was sitting on the edge of the examination table, legs dangling, tears streaming down her face. "They're coming, aren't they?" Mara said. "You called someone." "We had to," Eleanor said. "Mara, those injuries, someone hurt you badly. You need a doctor, and we need to make sure whoever did this can't do it again." "You don't understand," Mara said for the third time, but now there was no fight left in her voice. "Nobody ever understands." "Then help me understand," Eleanor said. "Talk to me. Tell me what's happening at home." Mara looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, haltingly, the words started to come. "It started," Mara said, "about 6 months ago. After her father left. Just packed his bags one night and never came back. Her mother, Amanda Sullivan, had always been strict, always had high expectations, but after the divorce, something shifted. The rules became harsher, the punishments more severe. Homework had to be perfect. Chores had to be completed exactly right. Any deviation, any mistake resulted in consequences. At first, it was extra chores. Then it was no dinner. Then it escalated. Mara's voice stayed flat, emotionless, as she described the belt, the wooden spoon, the wire coat hanger. How her mother would wait until late at night after Mara had gone to bed, would come into her room and deliver punishment for whatever infraction had occurred that day. Real or imagined. "She says I have to learn," Mara said, staring at her hands. "That I'm lazy. That I'm useless, that I'm the reason Dad left. She says if I was better, he would have stayed, so she's teaching me to be better." Eleanor felt bile rise in her throat. She swallowed it down. "Mara, nothing you could have done made your father leave, and nothing you've done deserves being hurt. What your mother is doing, that's not teaching, that's abuse. She says if I tell anyone, they'll take me away, put me in foster care. She says foster care is worse, that they do terrible things to kids there, that I'm lucky to have her even when she has to discipline me. Classic abuser tactics, isolate the victim, make them believe they have no other options, make them believe they deserve the abuse." Eleanor's hands clenched into fists. She wanted to rage, to scream, to punch something. But Mara needed her calm, needed her steady. "That's not true," Eleanor said as evenly as she could manage. "Foster care exists to protect children from situations exactly like this, and there are good people out there who take care of kids who need help. But right now, we need to focus on getting you safe and getting those injuries looked at properly." "The last time," Mara said quietly, was 2 nights ago. I spilled juice at dinner. It was an accident. The glass just slipped, but she said I was careless, said I wasn't paying attention. She sent me to my room after dinner and I knew what was coming. So I tried to prepare. Prepare how? I put on extra clothes, 3 pairs of pants, 2 shirts. Thought maybe it would help, make it hurt less. But it just made her angrier. She said I was being defiant, that I was making it harder on myself. She made me take it all off. And then, Mara's voice broke. She couldn't continue. She didn't need to. Eleanor moved to sit beside her on the examination table, carefully, slowly, giving Mara space to move away if she wanted. The girl didn't move. Eleanor put her arm around Mara's shoulders and the dam broke. Mara collapsed against her, sobbing, 9 years of terror and pain and loneliness pouring out in gasping, choking cries. I tried to be good, Mara sobbed. I tried so hard. I did everything right. But it's never enough. Nothing's ever enough. Shh, Eleanor murmured, holding her, rocking slightly. None of this is your fault. Not one bit of it. You didn't do anything wrong. Your mother is sick, Mara. What she's doing to you is sick. But we're going to stop it. I promise you. This ends today. Through the door, Eleanor could hear voices. The emergency responders had arrived. Patricia was briefing them, her medical terminology mixing with the deeper voices of the EMTs. In a few minutes, they would come in, would ask their questions, would begin the formal process of documentation and intervention. Eleanor pulled back slightly, keeping her hands on Mara's shoulders. Listen to me. In a few minutes, some people are going to come in here. They're going to ask you a lot of questions. Some of them might be hard to answer. Some of them might feel embarrassing. But I need you to be brave one more time. I need you to tell them everything you told me. Can you do that? Mara nodded, wiping her face with the back of her hand. And I'm going to be right here with you the whole time. I'm not going anywhere. Okay? Okay, Mara whispered. The door opened. 2 EMTs entered. A man and a woman, both in their standard uniforms. Behind them came a police officer, Detective Sarah Morrison, whose presence Patricia had specifically requested. Sarah specialized in child abuse cases. She'd worked with the school district before. Eleanor trusted her. Hey there, Sarah said, crouching down to Mara's level. I'm Detective Morrison, but you can call me Sarah. Mrs. Hayes tells me you've had a really tough day. Think you can tell me about it? Mara looked at Eleanor, who nodded encouragingly. Then, slowly, haltingly, she began to tell her story again. This time with more details, dates she could remember, specific incidents. The EMTs examined her injuries while she talked, gentle and professional, documenting everything with photographs that made Eleanor turn away. She couldn't watch. If she watched, she would lose her composure, and Mara needed her strong. Sarah took notes, her face impassive, professional, but Eleanor caught the flash of anger in her eyes, the tightness around her mouth. When Mara finished, Sarah closed her notebook and looked at the EMTs. What's your assessment? Multiple contusions and lacerations in various stages of healing, the female EMT said. Some of these injuries are at least a week old, possibly older. We need to transport to the hospital for a full examination. There's risk of infection and we need to rule out any internal injuries. Sarah nodded. Mara, we're going to take you to the hospital now. The doctors there are going to take care of you, get you cleaned up, make sure everything heals properly. And while that's happening, I'm going to go talk to your mother. Is there anything else you need to tell me before I do that? Anything you're worried about? Mara's eyes went wide. She's going to be so angry. When she finds out I told, she's going to. She's not going to do anything, Sarah interrupted firmly. I promise you, Mara, she's not going to have the opportunity to hurt you again. That's my job, making sure of that. Do you understand? Mara nodded, but Eleanor could see the doubt in her eyes. After 6 months of abuse, of empty promises that help was coming, of learning that adults couldn't be trusted to protect her, why should she believe this time would be different? "Can Mrs. Hayes come with me?" Mara asked suddenly. "To the hospital?" Sarah looked at Eleanor. "Can you?" "Yes," Eleanor said immediately. She'd already texted her husband, let him know she'd be late. Very late. Maybe not home until tomorrow. He understood. He always understood. "I'll come with you. I'll stay as long as you need me." The hospital was a blur of white walls and harsh lights and endless questions. Doctors examined Mara thoroughly, took more photographs, drew blood, ran tests. Eleanor sat in the corner of the examination room, trying to be unobtrusive but present. Mara kept looking over at her, checking to make sure she hadn't left. The injuries, the doctors confirmed, were extensive. Bruises covered most of Mara's back, sides, and upper legs. Several lacerations had become infected and would require antibiotics. 2 ribs were cracked, not broken, but damaged enough to cause severe pain when pressure was applied, hence the inability to sit without agony. "She's been managing this alone?" Dr. Farm, Rashid asked Eleanor in the hallway while Mara was getting an X-ray. "A 9-year-old child has been treating these injuries herself." She was terrified, Eleanor said, terrified of what would happen if anyone found out. "Jesus," Dr. Rashid muttered. He looked exhausted, and Eleanor realized this probably wasn't his first child abuse case of the week. Maybe not even his first of the day. "We're going to keep her overnight. Get her stabilized, make sure the infection doesn't spread. Child Protective Services is sending someone over to interview her again tomorrow morning. What happens after that? Depends on what they find. If they can verify the abuse, which given these injuries seems pretty certain, they'll remove her from the home. Place her either with other family members if there are any, or in emergency foster care until a more permanent solution can be arranged. And her mother? That's up to the DA's office, but if the detective does her job right, Amanda Sullivan is looking at serious charges, child abuse, child endangerment, possibly more depending on what else they find. Eleanor nodded numbly. She should feel triumphant. Justice was being served. Mara was safe now, but all she felt was a crushing weight of failure. 6 months. For 6 months, Mara had been suffering, and nobody noticed. Not the teachers, not the school counselor, not the neighbors. Nobody. She went back into the examination room. Mara was back from her X-ray, lying on the hospital bed in a gown several sizes too big, looking small and fragile, and so terribly young. "The doctors say you're staying overnight," Eleanor said gently, "to make sure the medicine works and everything starts healing properly." "Are you staying?" Mara asked immediately, panic creeping into her voice. "I can't stay all night," Eleanor admitted. "But I'll stay until you fall asleep, and I'll come back first thing tomorrow morning. Is that okay?" Mara considered this, then nodded. "Will you tell me a story? My dad used to tell me stories before bed, before he left." Eleanor's throat tightened. "Of course. What kind of story do you want?" "A happy one," Mara said softly, "with a happy ending, where everything turns out okay." So Eleanor told her a story. She made it up as she went along, spinning a tale about a brave girl who went on an adventure, who faced down monsters and dragons, who discovered she was stronger than she ever knew. By the time she got to the part where the girl returned home to a kingdom that celebrated her courage, Mara's eyes were drooping closed. "Mrs. Hayes," Mara murmured, half asleep. "Yes, sweetheart. Thank you for noticing, for not letting me keep standing." Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you for being brave enough to tell me." The next morning arrived too early and too bright. Eleanor had barely slept, her mind replaying every interaction she'd had with Mara over the past months, cataloging all the signs she'd missed. The quietness, the way Mara never wanted to participate in group activities, how she always volunteered to help clean up, anything to stay busy, to avoid going home. How she never brought lunch from home, always bought cafeteria food, because food at home probably came with conditions, with rules that could be broken, with punishments waiting to happen. She arrived at the hospital at 7 a.m. with fresh clothes for Mara, donated by one of the other teachers who had a daughter about the same size. Patricia had texted the staff, explaining only that one of their students was in the hospital and needed support. The response had been immediate: clothes, books, stuffed animals, cards from classmates who didn't know the details but knew something bad had happened. Mara was awake when Eleanor arrived, sitting up in bed, looking more rested than she had in months, probably. A social worker sat in the chair beside her bed, a woman in her 50s named Margaret Chen, no relation to the school nurse. "Mrs. Hayes," Margaret greeted her. "Mara's been telling me about you, about how you noticed she wouldn't sit down." "I should have noticed sooner," Eleanor said, unable to keep the guilt from her voice. "You noticed when it mattered," Margaret said firmly. "And you acted. That's what counts. Mara, would you like to tell Mrs. Hayes what we've been discussing?" Mara nodded. "They're not sending me back home. Detective Morrison arrested my mom last night. They found evidence. In my room. Pictures she'd taken, on her phone." Eleanor felt sick. "Pictures?" Margaret's expression hardened. Amanda Sullivan had been documenting the abuse. We're not entirely sure why. Perhaps as some twisted justification that she was appropriately disciplining her child. Perhaps as a control mechanism, threatening to show them to Mara if she told anyone. Regardless, it provided us with irrefutable evidence. She's been charged with multiple counts of child abuse. She's currently in custody, and given the severity of the charges and the evidence, she won't be making bail. "What happens to Mara now?" Eleanor asked. "We've located her father," Margaret said. "Jason Sullivan. He's been living in Colorado. Detective Morrison contacted him last night, explained the situation. He's on a flight back this morning. He claims he didn't know about the abuse, that he left because of issues with his ex-wife, but had been sending child support, trying to maintain contact with Mara through video calls." Mara's face brightened slightly at the mention of her father. "He really didn't know. Mom always made me pretend everything was fine when we video called, said if I told him anything, he'd never want to see me again because I was too much trouble." Another layer of manipulation. Another way Amanda Sullivan had isolated her daughter, cut off any potential avenue of help or escape. "Your father wants to take custody," Margaret continued. "We'll need to do a home study, verify that he can provide a safe and stable environment. But preliminary indications are positive. In the meantime, you'll be staying in a temporary foster home. The family has been specially trained to work with children who've experienced trauma. They're good people, Mara. They'll take care of you." "Can I go back to school?" Mara asked suddenly. "To Mrs. Hayes's class?" Margaret looked at Eleanor. "That's actually something we need to discuss. Mara's living situation is going to change, depending on where her father settles. Whether he moves back here or whether Mara goes to Colorado with him, her school might change too." "But I want to stay," Mara said, her voice rising. "I want to stay in Mrs. Hayes's class. Please. I just started to feel safe there. Everyone knows me there. I don't want to be the new kid somewhere else where everyone asks questions and stares and knows something bad happened." Eleanor's heart broke. "Sweetheart, that's not really my decision to make, but wherever you end up, I know you're going to be okay. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met." "Because I had to be," Mara said quietly. "Because nobody knew, nobody helped. Until you." The guilt twisted in Eleanor's stomach again, but Margaret shook her head. "Mara, I've been doing this job for 20 years. I've seen hundreds of cases of child abuse. You know what most of them have in common? By the time someone notices and reports it, the child has been suffering for years. Not months, years. Your teacher noticed in months. That's actually remarkable. It means she was paying attention. It means she cared enough to push past the excuses and the hiding and the fear. You should be proud of her, and she should be proud of herself. Eleanor met Margaret's eyes and saw understanding there. Margaret knew about the guilt. She probably carried plenty of her own. Everyone in this line of work did. The cases you couldn't save, the kids who fell through the cracks, the ones you got to too late. But Mara hadn't fallen through. Eleanor had caught her. Maybe not as fast as she should have, but she'd caught her. Over the next few days, the story unfolded in ways both better and worse than Eleanor had imagined. Jason Sullivan returned, horrified by what his daughter had endured, angry at himself for not pushing harder to see her in person, for accepting the video calls as sufficient contact. He moved back to their old house, the one he and Amanda had owned together. Amanda, meanwhile, remained in custody. Her lawyer tried to argue that she'd been under extreme stress, suffering from depression after the divorce, that she needed mental health treatment, not incarceration. The photographs on her phone told a different story. Dozens of them, taken over months, documenting the progression of injuries, the escalating violence. The DA's office was building a case for aggravated child abuse, child endangerment, possibly even attempted murder given the severity of some of the injuries and the risk of infection. Mara started therapy, twice-weekly sessions with a trauma specialist. She went to stay with her foster family, who by all accounts were exactly what Margaret had promised. Kind, patient, understanding. But she asked to visit Eleanor at school, wanted to see her classroom again, her friends again. Eleanor arranged it. 2 weeks after the initial discovery, Mara walked back into the 4th grade classroom. The other children had been told that Mara had been sick, that she was getting better now, that they should be gentle with her. They swarmed her with hugs and cards and stories about everything she'd missed. Eleanor watched from her desk as Mara laughed, actually laughed, for the first time in months probably. And when it was time for independent reading, when the other children scattered to their favorite spots, Mara walked over to her old desk. She stood there for a moment, hand on the back of the chair. Then, slowly, carefully, she sat down, winced slightly, but stayed seated. "It still hurts a little," she admitted to Eleanor, who had moved to stand beside her. "But the doctor says it will get better. Everything's going to get better." "Yes," Eleanor said, throat tight with emotion. "Yes, it is." 3 months later, Eleanor sat in a courtroom, watching as Amanda Sullivan was sentenced to 12 years in prison for child abuse. Mara wasn't there. Her therapist had recommended against it, said she didn't need to see her mother again, didn't need that image in her head. Jason Sullivan sat in the front row, his hand clasped with his daughter's advocate from Child Protective Services. The judge's voice was stern, unyielding. "Mrs. Sullivan, you were given the sacred trust of raising a child. Instead, you chose to inflict pain, suffering, and terror on a helpless little girl who depended on you for everything. Your actions were calculated, sustained, and showed a complete disregard for your daughter's well-being. This court finds your behavior unconscionable. 12 years. It wouldn't erase what Mara had endured, wouldn't give her back the childhood that had been stolen. But it was something. It was justice. It was the system, imperfect as it was, saying that what happened to Mara Sullivan mattered, that she mattered. Eleanor returned to her classroom the next day. New students now occupied the seats. A new school year had started. But Mara's desk, 3rd row, second from the window, remained a reminder. Eleanor looked at it every day, remembered the girl who wouldn't sit down, the girl whose fear had spoken louder than words, if only someone had been listening. And she listened now, listened harder, watched more carefully, noticed the small things. The child who always wore long sleeves, the one who flinched at raised voices, the one who seemed hungry all the time. She couldn't save everyone, but she could try, she could pay attention. She could care enough to look past the surface, to see what children were afraid to say. Mara visited sometimes on weekends when Jason brought her by. She'd moved to a new school, closer to where her father now worked. She was thriving there, her father reported, making friends, joining clubs, learning to trust adults again. Still in therapy, still working through trauma that would probably never completely heal, but surviving. More than surviving. Living. The last time Eleanor saw her, Mara brought her a drawing. A picture of a classroom, with stick figures representing children and one taller stick figure at the front. In the corner, one figure sat at a desk, surrounded by hearts. "That's me," Mara said, pointing to the sitting figure. "I can sit now. It doesn't hurt anymore. I wanted you to know." Eleanor hugged her, feeling tears slip down her cheeks. "I'm so proud of you, Mara. So incredibly proud." "I'm proud of you too," Mara said, "for noticing, for caring. My therapist says that's what saved me, that someone finally noticed and cared enough to do something." After Mara left, Eleanor sat at her desk for a long time, staring at that drawing, thinking about how close it had come to going another way, how easily Mara could have become another statistic, another child who fell through the cracks, another preventable tragedy. But she hadn't, because on one ordinary morning, a teacher noticed something unusual, a child who wouldn't sit down. And instead of dismissing it, instead of accepting easy explanations, instead of moving on with lesson plans and grade books and the 1,000 other demands of teaching, Eleanor Hayes had paid attention. She'd noticed the fear, she'd seen the pain, she'd acted, and in acting she'd given a 9-year-old girl her life back. The story didn't have a perfect ending. Trauma doesn't work that way. Mara would carry scars, physical and emotional, for the rest of her life. She'd have trust issues, relationship challenges, moments when the past would catch up with her and pull her under. But she'd also have the chance to heal, to grow, to become whoever she wanted to be, free from the constant terror of violence waiting at home. That was something. That was everything. Eleanor returned to the drawing, studying it one more time before carefully placing it in her desk drawer, where she kept the most important reminders of why she did this job. Why she got up every morning, faced a classroom full of children with their infinite needs and problems and potential, and tried to make a difference. Because sometimes you do. Sometimes you notice one small thing, one odd behavior, one crack in the carefully constructed facade, and you pull on that thread, and behind it you find a child who desperately needed someone to see them, to really see them. Mara Sullivan had refused to sit in class, and in that refusal, in that silent scream for help, she'd given Eleanor the chance to save her. The teacher made a discovery she'd never forget, but more importantly, she'd made a difference she'd carry forever. And somewhere across town, a little girl was sitting comfortably for the first time in months, without fear, without pain, building a new life from the ashes of the old one. One chair, one child, one teacher who cared enough to ask why. That's all it took to change everything. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with others who might benefit from hearing it. Stories like Mara's happen every day, often in silence, but awareness, attention, and action can make all the difference. Drop a comment below telling us what you think. Together we can help ensure that no child's silent cry for help goes unnoticed. Thank you for watching. And remember, sometimes the smallest signs carry the biggest messages. Stay vigilant, stay compassionate, and never stop noticing.